Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Event Hustlers. Happy Tuesday. Today definitely feels like a Monday because it was Memorial Day yesterday. Spent the whole day at the pool and that felt like the weekend for sure. But welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I am very excited, of course, about today's guest, who's Sheila Fox with Event Insight. Sheila, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
You and I have known each other for many years, and you currently live in my home state of Ohio, which is something not a lot of people know. So I feel like we've had a connection for many years, and it's been so great to get to know you and to work with you. And you're now currently part of the Ignite group, so I get to work with you even more frequently. And so it's been great for me to get to know you. And I wanted to make sure that other people in the industry got to know about how awesome you are as well. So why don't you just start by telling everyone a little bit about what you do, and then I would love to get into kind of the story and your career path and all that fun stuff.
So just a background on how Liz and I met. We actually met on social media, I think a long time ago on Facebook maybe, or Twitter. And I just thought you were awesome. I knew you were younger than me, and we're doing great things. And so we just started like chatting back and forth on social media. And then I got the chance to hire you to speak to PCMA, my chapter of PCMA. Yeah. And then I got to work with you again on a client event, which was really fun. So again, my name's Sheila Fox, and I live in Columbus. I'm from a small town called Dover in Northeast Ohio. And I own my own company of planning events and managing associations. I launched it in 2007 when I was just 27 years old. And had I known I was going to start my own business 5 years out of college, I would have not have a minor in sociology, but it's all been good. Like everything I've learned from my very first job has led me to this career path. And I work hard, I work long hours, but I set my own schedule, which is really the best part of being a business owner. I work with a lot of associations because that's where I started. And I work with some nonprofit groups as well. Do you want me to tell a little bit about like how I got started? I went to Ohio University in Athens, and I was going to be a teacher because I come from a long line of teachers. And my mom had a really hard year that year with her class, and she said, "You don't want to do this for 30 years." So I went to orientation, and they said, "Well, you should think about doing a degree in communications. You can really do lots with it. You get a broad range of classes and skill sets." So I did that. I selected my major in orientation. And then, but the thing that really helped me set me on my career path was my work study program. So I worked at the Center for Community Service for Ohio University, and I was helping students find volunteer opportunities. And I worked there all 4 years of college, and I was also in charge of recognizing volunteers during National Volunteer Week. So I was planning events, and that's really where I got the bug. But even before that, through my high school and even middle school experiences, I was planning events for the groups that I was involved in. I think I have on my bio on my website that I was the president of my 4-H club, and I planned my first meeting at 13 because I did. So I knew how to set agendas, and I knew how to do all that stuff really early. So I did AmeriCorps after college and did a year of service with an organization that I had been involved in high school, helping youth develop leadership skills and learn about state government. And that job, that year of service, led me to my first job in an association. And I worked for the cable telecommunications industry. But I really learned about association work and how no one tells you in college there's this whole industry of work that is really lucrative and great people. No one really tells you about that in college. So I had my first job, and while I was working there, my boss was on the board of the nonprofit that I had served with AmeriCorps and had been involved in high school. And the person who was their development director was leaving, and they asked me to plan the 2 fundraisers as a side project. So I had my full-time job, and I was also doing these 2 other client events, other work. So that's kind of really where I got the idea that I could manage multiple things at once. And that is, then I got involved. I wanted to get my CMP, and I hadn't been working in the industry that long. And I realized you needed to work for 3 years and you needed to have all these credit hours. Well, I didn't have the credit hours, so I joined PCMA to get more credits. And then I got on the board, and then I became the president. And it's 20, almost 20 years later, I still don't have my CMP because I started my business, had 2 kids. So one of my goals for 2019 is actually to get my CMP, because it's been a goal for my whole career. But my involvement with PCMA was to get involved and to learn and meet new people and to get continuing education. And that's where I learned about independent meeting planners. And I didn't realize that was even a thing. Like, no one tells you that this is a thing. So I went to my first PCMA Convening Leaders Conference, and it was in Toronto in 2007, in January. And that year happened to be the year that the chair of the board was an independent meeting planner. And they had a whole track of classes for independent planners. And I think it was meant to be. I met amazing people. I got like a whole host of information that I needed, of what to do. And so I came home from that 3-day conference with a plan, and I was going to leave my job, but keep my employer as a client. And I was able to do that for five more years. So I had them, the nonprofit group that I was still working on. And then my boss, when I told him I was quitting my job, he went home and told his wife, and she literally called me 2 days later and asked me to plan her conference. And that group is still a client, even though she left years and years and years ago. I still work with them. So I literally had 3 clients when I quit my job, which is really, I know, unusual. That never happens. But because of my association background, I was able to get referrals from other people who knew me. And that's how I've built my business. So the nice thing about my work is that they're annual events. So I'm not constantly having to hustle new business. As long as I keep them happy, and I'm so happy working with them, we just renew the contract from year to year. And what I've learned is I have become oftentimes the historical knowledge for that organization, because executive directors leave, board members roll off, and I'm the only one who really knows what's been happening in the organization over the last several years. For one group that I have worked with almost my whole career, I was opening their mail and paying their bills between executive directors because they didn't have anyone else they could trust to do it. So I've, gained a reputation of being very responsible and very, conscientious, and helping groups manage people's money and manage their money and pay their bills and stuff like that.
It's an amazing story. I feel like no matter how many planners I talk to, the story is basically the same. The organizations they worked with and whatever are very different, but it's pretty much always, I never knew this could be a career. I stumbled into it. I loved it. I started working with this organization, and that snowballed into all these other things. Yeah. It's such a classic story. One thing that caught my attention when you were just talking, I was just talking to someone last week about this, and this is the same for associations, but also pretty much any client, that a lot of times the client itself changes. The board leaves, or the person leaves their job. And so the person that you've had the relationship with is not necessarily there anymore. And I think a lot of people struggle with, then how do you keep that business? Because then you have to win over the new people. You seem to have been able to keep this reputation, and as you mentioned, kind of the historical figure. But how what are the challenges that you've seen in that process, and how do you keep the business when the clients change so frequently?
Well, I found that the new executive director is thrilled to have me on board, and knowing that's like one piece that is not overwhelming to them, because they're jumping into a new organization and they're jumping into a new experience. And it's the same for me when I take on a new association. You have to learn all the key players, all the board members, the culture of the organization. You have to know the personalities of every board member, how they like to be communicated with. So when I am the person who's like, well, this is your board and this is how they operate, and historically the conference has been like this, and we can, make tweak changes, but they've been very grateful to have me on board. And then that's for the one group that I've had 5 executive directors in 10 years or 12 years now. That they just are just so grateful. For others, I haven't really had to like resell myself to them, because when they've been hired or brought on board, or board members, some of my groups, they go through, like, they start out as a at-large member on the board and they move up the chairs. So they've been working with me for several years before they become the president. So it's just been an ongoing relationship building for the most part. I'm trying to think of any other groups that the transition has happened, but for the most part, it's just been, they're happy to have me and my knowledge.
That's so awesome.
They beg me to stay, actually.
That's the exact relationship.
Yeah. And one group I worked with for 10 years or so, and the person left that I was working with, she retired, and we had worked together for 10 years. And I just felt like it was time for me to part ways with the group. Mm-hmm. I wanted the new person to feel like they could do what they wanted with it. I felt like I had kind of given all that I could to group. And it's one of those groups where, no matter what you did to make the event great, there were people who criticized it. And so and I told them this at one point, I'm like, it's like showing them a picture of your baby. Like, look how beautiful my baby is, and them saying it's ugly. And so it's like, it's getting to be too personal for me. And I thought, well, now that she's walking away, I can walk away and not feel guilty that I'm leaving her in a lurch. It's giving this person a fresh slate. He can bring in someone else. So actually, a friend of mine took over that group, and it's doing fine. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's nice to have like a breakaway point.
Yes.
I think we're good.
Yeah, there's times when you're like, I sent a heartfelt email that said to the board or to the organization or planning committee that said, I think this is a great time for me for us to part ways. And it was very amicable, and they're still my friends, but I needed to open the door for a new opportunity. Because it wasn't a lucrative piece of business. It was a small nonprofit, and it has opened the door to, as we've talked about, 2 of the groups that I manage as one, I'm their executive director, and the other, I'm their association manager. They pay me a retainer, which is so great, because that we talked about before, like, the money is just like reliable income. That's a safety net. And I don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, how am I going to pay the bills this month? Because of those consistent clients.
Yeah, those retainers are key. We were talking about that in Ignite earlier today. We always have our Ignite calls right before this video chat. So I always refer to our Ignite calls. Like, we were just talking about this. I do have some more questions for you, but in the meantime, I see that we have some live viewers. So for those of you who are watching live, if you have any questions for Sheila or any comments, don't forget to put them in the comments, because I can bring those on air and we can ask them as well. Now, Sheila, I know that you have a very successful business. And again, I kind of know this just because of our relationship. And one of the things that I'm very impressed by is the fact that you've built your business, and you're at a point that I think a lot of planners really try to get to, which is that you have some retainer clients that keep the money coming in. You have a good base of clients who come back to you year after year, and you still get quite a few new client clients coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have, there's a lot of people who are really working very hard to get to that point. And you've mentioned it's been 12 years, almost 30 business, right?
Yep.
So obviously these things don't happen overnight. But I want to ask you about some of the benefits to running your own business. Like, what are the joys that you've experienced because you've done this?
Yeah.
Empire.
So that's the thing. I think I could never go back unless it was the perfect opportunity or scenario. I don't think I could ever go back to a 9-to-5 job where I had to be at work at a certain time and come home and at a certain time, because I work a ton. Like, I wouldn't say that being your own boss is easy. It's hard, and I work a lot. But I pick my father-in-law when I started my business. He was an attorney that owned his own practice. He said, "Oh, you can work part-time. You can decide which 12 hours of the day you want to work." And I wouldn't say I work 12 hours a day most of the time. There are days that I work when it's busy, like last month this month, May being my busiest. I worked 15 to 18 hours a day for a couple weeks. But that's just, I know that's a season. That's not forever. Now, I have 2 little girls. My girls are 7 and 4. I meet my daughter off the bus every day, and I work from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. I meet her off the bus, and then I'm able to spend time with her. She does her thing. I still get a little bit more work done, but I'm there for her, and I don't have that childcare expense for after school.
Yeah.
And then I'm also able to volunteer in the classroom because I have the flexibility of setting my own schedule. So I volunteer twice a month in the classroom. And then I also helped in the art room this year because the art teacher had a surgery. And I found that was my favorite thing. And if I get to, I'm going to ask him if I can volunteer on a regular basis next year.
Awesome.
And then the other thing I do is, like, I try to do things that most people have to do on the weekends during the week, because I can answer email at night when everyone else is at Target, or I can, whatever errands need run, I try to do during the day. And I also go to yoga and at lunchtime, because I've learned over the course of the last 12 years this work, and I meet with a lot of students who want to get into the industry. And the thing that I've started to talk about a lot with them is taking care of yourself, because this job is very stressful. I read studies all the time that say that meeting planning is like the top 5 stressful jobs in the country. And I've got gray hair to prove it. I started getting gray hair at 27 when I started my business. I think, and I had a health scare last year that really was debilitating during my busy season. And I had to really step back and figure out how to be able to take care of myself in a way that didn't compromise my business, but put me first. So I started doing yoga and meditating. I use the Headspace app. A friend of mine told me about that. And that also helps me sleep at night, because I don't know about you, but my brain, it's hard to shut off, especially if I work late at night. Those 2 things for me have been huge. And then I try to do something for myself every day that gives me joy, because this work can be very taxing on your mind and your body and your spirit. So I try to find something every day that gives me joy. If it's going out and working in my yard for 3 minutes and something like that. But really the yoga has helped me a ton, because it's exercise, but also the time that I pause and I'm able to regroup. And it's something I do for myself. My phone is turned off. No one can reach me. It's also 2 minutes from my house. I have no stop signs or stoplights to get there. So I can work until 5 minutes before and then go and then be back in 50 minutes. It's great.
And there's literally nothing stopping you from getting there. You're in the car.
If I'm late, it's just ridiculous to be on the way.
But I think those are all the things. I mean, if you just think about what you just said and all the things that you get to do because you run your business, like you said, our industry is a very stressful industry. And so for people who are working full time in this industry, you might love what you do, but it's still really difficult to find the time to take care of yourself and to really, invest in the things that matter to you. I know family matters to you a lot. One of the perks of my relationship with Sheila is that we worked on a project of hers together in Columbus. And I got to fly out. I was there for like one night, I think, or two.
Yeah, two.
And the second night, I got to go to Sheila's house and meet her kids and her husband and her parents. We had pizza. I was like, this is the Ohio life. People.
Sat on a screen on porch. Yeah, it was fun.
The Indians were playing.
Yeah, my mom. Yeah,
it was great. And I think being able to invest in things like that is just, it's so amazing.
And the other thing that I do for myself is I take a solo vacation every January because that's my slow season. And I fly out to California to visit my best friend. And that is like the week that gets me through the year. Like I have such a great relationship with my friend. She's also in the events industry. So it's kind of like work, but it's really an R&R for me. But I've gotten to meet tons of cool people out there, a lot of women who own their own businesses who are all just making this great life. I joke with them that no one like really works out there because they all are available to hike at 2 and play cards and like whatever. I'm like, but they all work weekends because they're in the weddings industry.
Oh yeah.
So that is one thing I do. And then the other thing I love about the freedom of my business is I can travel and do like trips. Like we went back to California for spring break because my girls have been begging to come with me on that trip. And that's my sacred week to myself.
Yeah.
But we went for spring break and we took, my husband, my parents, my girls. And because of the time difference, I was able to work for a few hours every day. I had 2 client events while I was in California that I wasn't at, which I never, that's like,
that's a feeling.
Happen. But because I was the kind of events that they were and the people that I have in place, they ran on without a hitch because I was able to communicate with the venues from California, give them the guarantees, and still be able to work from like 7 a.m. Pacific time to 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then by 1 o'clock Pacific time, it was 4 o'clock Eastern and no one was emailing me anymore. So I really could have an extra vacation where I did work, but I didn't feel like I was sacrificing all of my time to work because I was there. So this summer I'm planning we're going on 2 or 3 different trips. And the one trip is to Florida with a girlfriend and her kids. And I'm hoping that I can do a couple hours of work every day in the mornings and then enjoy the rest of the day and not really miss a beat. So,
yeah, I'm a total morning person. If I could just work from 7 to 10, I could get more done in a day than most people can. So I always say the California schedule is like I need to live there, have all my clients here. I would be so happy if I could have the whole day.
Yeah.
That's basically what I do anyway. I work in the mornings, Eastern time.
Yeah.
And then like you, it's like a guilty pleasure to go to Target on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. Just nobody's bothering you.
Yeah. And a couple other things I'll share that I've learned is I try to take Monday mornings for myself. And that could be work, but it could also be getting groceries or planning the menu for the week or setting the schedule for the week. I used to do it on Sundays, but my husband and I have started to do a date night on Sunday night almost every week because we found that it's easier we don't have other commitments on Sunday nights typically. It's easier to get a sitter, it's easier to get a dinner reservation, and it's easier to park. Like if we want to go to the Short North, which is a great cultural restaurant neighborhood in Columbus, if we want to do that, Sunday nights is the night to go. Even parking is free. So that's what we do. So Monday mornings have become my like time to regroup and reset. And then the other thing that I've started to do is I will block Mondays and Fridays where I don't have any meetings. And so on those days, those are desk days where I work at my desk. I get projects done. I pay bills, hopefully do my financials that I swear I'm going to do. And then Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are the days that I schedule meetings. And I feel like the more that I can chunk those meetings up, I'm more productive. Because if you have a lunch on Wednesday and a lunch on Friday, you're really out of the office for like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then you're in a flow, and then it breaks up, and then you're back. And how much can you really get done?
Yeah.
So I've really tried to protect my schedule where I'm only doing meetings or client or interfacing with a face-to-face on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And then anytime someone schedules a request to meet with me, I use Calendly, the app Calendly, and I give them my link, and you can set in your Calendly schedule like certain hours. So they can only book a meeting with me between 8:30 and 2 p.m. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, because during the school year, I'm getting my daughter off the bus and I can't have a meeting at 3 o'clock. And so that's helped really too, to be very protective of my time.
Yeah. And you can also schedule the standard meeting, which I think is so interesting. Like, I remember when I worked at Columbia University, they always had like a standard 1 hour meeting. And I was like, we could definitely have this done in 10 minutes. I'm not sure why we have an hour in our calendar. So when I use schedulers like that, or when I'm setting up meetings, I always try to set, is it a 15-minute meeting or is it 30? I usually try not to give people more than an hour unless it's really necessary, because it's just like a speaker. If you give them an hour on stage, they will certainly fill it up. But if you give them 10 minutes, they will rock it, because they know they have a certain message they have to get across in 10 minutes.
Right.
Where do you hope to see your business in the future?
Well, so this year has been interesting. I started out the year when I signed up for Ignite with, I really didn't want to bring on any new clients this year. I really wanted to service the clients that I have the best that I possibly could. Anytime I bring on a new client, and just because of the way my clients work with, it's not like a one-off event. It's an annual event. It's learning the board, learning the dynamics. It takes a lot of time and energy, and it always takes longer than you think it will. It always takes more time the first year than once they're up and running, it's a smooth sailing ship, right? But this year I said, I don't want to take any more clients. I want to focus the year on keeping my clients happy and then focusing on what's next for me. I know I can't physically do this kind of work, like the moving boxes and unloading my car kind of work forever. And what does this look like? So a great friend of mine who had worked in the hotel side of the business for a long time, last year we met in the summer, and I said, you should start your own company. You have tons of experience. She's also in Columbus. I said, I could give you so much business. I turn it away all the time because I don't have time. So she launched in October, and we've already partnered on like two different groups. And what has happened is that I will get the piece of business through my personal relationship, or even this one we're working on together. She found me on Google, but it was a whole year ago. And so I've put together the proposal. I've worked through the event. And then once I've learned about it, I know that she can handle most of the event. So she's doing all of the logistics of running the event, and I'm just getting the business. So if I do want to grow my business, that's my model of like bringing in the business through my connections and reputation, and then handing it off to someone else. So I have her in place, which is awesome and working out really well. And it's also great to have like a friend in the trenches locally that I can just like text it and, and say like, oh my gosh, this is happening, or do you have a referral or whatever. So it's a great sounding board. The other thing I did this year was I hired an assistant. And she is another fellow mom in my community. She's working for me like 5 to 10 hours a week. And it's been amazing to be able to delegate some tasks off my plate to her. And she's just a total rock star and is doing awesome. And I have to give her more projects. I've been, most event planners are control freaks, so it's hard to delegate things that are important. So I'm learning that lesson this year really well.
I I love you and your business. I think I'm so proud and happy of where you have come and who you are now. And I think your model is so important for people to follow because you service your clients so well. You get people who stay with you for 10 plus years. You're not so many planners. It's like you're cycling your clients so quickly that you feel like you can never bring in enough business. But you're a really good example of doing a job very well, keeping people super engaged, making them love you to the point where they're recommending you to everyone. And things like you've been in business for 12 years and you just hired your first assistant and you just started creating these partnerships. I think it's a genius model. There's so many people who kind of see the vision. They want to be big before they've set the base. And so they start hiring all these people to do things for them before they've learned the skill of doing it themselves, or they've mastered having a set client base to the point where they love them to death. And I just feel like everything I've learned about you, the way that you've done things, maybe at times you have questioned yourself or doubted the process, but I think where you are is so admirable. And I think people should, that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show. You have so much of value to say. I love your perspective on self-care, and we've talked about many things. And so I hope many other people will reach out to you and kind of try to learn from you. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
Well, my website is eventinsight.com. So you can see my business is listed under my name. So that's a great way. It has all my connections. I'm on social media. My Twitter is Sheila N. Fox. And I'm also on Facebook. Facebook is my go-to social media platform. I just have such a really strong connections in a lot of groups. So that's where I've really spent a lot of my time and energy is in Facebook. And what I wanted to go back to one thing you said about managing people. So I have always worked in small organizations where I've learned a lot because there's nobody else to do the job, right? My husband works at a corporation. He has his whole career. There are 4,000 people in his organization, and he manages people. And he manages people all day, and then he answers emails all night because he doesn't get his work done. And so I knew early on that when you start to grow and manage people, it's just a whole other element. You're not actually doing events or doing the thing that you love. You're managing people and all of their problems and all of their issues too. So I was very hesitant to grow because of that, because I wanted to be able to still have the flexibility of my business and still be able to call the shots and do things like that. So I've been very slow and intentional in my growth. And that's why.
You're smart. A lot of people feel like I need the help right away. And yes, it is helpful. And to your point, there is work involved with that. Obviously, you have to give them the work. You have to train them. You have to monitor their progress. You have to pay them. But I just think there's a lot to be learned when you figure out how to do it yourself. You work with really small teams. You work with people who you really respect and like your friend that you talked about partnering with. And you build it slowly to the point where it's manageable and you're not jumping into something just because you hope you can be a big business one day.
Right. Yeah, my friend that I've helped her start her company, we've been friends since 2003 because she was my convention service manager at the hotel where she worked, and she was my contact for an event that I did there for 10 years. So I knew her integrity, I knew her personality. We became personal friends and have maintained that friendship even though we hadn't worked together directly for a long time. Now we talk almost every day, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and telling us about your career. I had about 1 billion more questions for you that I didn't even get to. So we'll have to have you on as another guest again. Okay. But if anyone wants to reach out to Sheila, again, she kind of shared her email and all her social, and I'll put some of those in the comments of this video so that you can reach out to her. She's also part of the Event Hustlers group on Facebook, so be sure to join that because she always shares some great insight in some of those chats as well. The recordings of this, of course, will be available on YouTube and Facebook and pretty much every other platform that you can find me. And we'll be back next Tuesday with another great guest at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Thank you to all the people who joined and shared your comments and watched, and to all of you who will watch after the video is live. Really appreciate everyone's support. And Sheila, again, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Liz.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.